Thanks for joining us. It's been quite a long 4 years for the Minneapolis Police Department, from the chaos of 2020, the murder of George Floyd, to this rise in youth crime. The police chief says he wanted to lead the greatest comeback story in policing when he took the job here, but he calls the current state of things in Minneapolis unsustainable and nearing a crisis. That was just some of what he said in a long conversation he had with Kent this morning. And that conversation itself didn't stop with just those things. Kent, take us from here.
Yeah, Jana, Chief O'Hara told me that his department is tired and under immense strain due to being understaffed and overworked by a spike in juvenile crime. He raised these same issues in a conversation with you a year ago, and despite saying they have made quite a bit of progress in terms of morale, he says something has to change, and soon.
I see internally how burnt out some of our officers are. We have to realize that we've gotten 40% smaller than we were 3 years ago when there was much less crime and violence. And we have to recognize it's not sustainable.
Chief O'Hara says it's no secret that much of the strain on MPD right now can be traced to the exponential growth in juvenile crime, from viral Kia and Hyundai thefts to fast-paced robbery sprees in recent weeks.
Unfortunately, with the level of staffing that we have, it's triage like everything else. And we're not going to do what would probably happen in the majority of the state. I think probably a majority of law enforcement in the state, when they see a stolen car, they're going to pursue it and then arrest people at the end. We're not going to chase cars that are just stolen. So that's never been a part of our law enforcement strategy.
Do you believe it should be?
No, I mean, it's ridiculous to try and chase a car of kids that's stolen in a city and put a police officer's life, those kids' lives, and everybody else that's out here at risk just for a stolen car, especially when we know what's going to happen. We take the kids into custody, and more likely than not, everyone except the driver will be immediately released.
He says communication with the Juvenile Detention Center and prosecutors on that issue is a work in progress.
I think the entire system was overwhelmed by it, and it continues to be a problem. Yes, auto theft is down about a third compared to where we were at this point last year. It's still way above what it had been prior to this problem. And there is absolutely overlap between kids joyriding in stolen cars, stealing these Kias and Hyundais, and the robbery sprees that we're seeing.
He says there's also an overlap with another issue plaguing crime in general.
We have just so many more guns that wind up stolen. I think last year we had almost 500 guns that were reported stolen in the city of Minneapolis alone. About half of the guns that get stolen in the city are stolen from inside of cars.
And while he says MPD did remove about 1,100 guns from the streets last year, he says they can't do it alone.
And while I am all for the Second Amendment and lawful gun ownership, at the same time, I think we have to remember that the facts just are, when there are more guns in circulation, there will be more harm. The majority of the guns that wind up in crimes in Minnesota were originally legally purchased here. That's different from where I come from. It's different from a lot of other cities. It's different from what you would see on the West Coast or in the Northeast.
And while he wouldn't rule out supporting some type of gun control legislation, he says his chief concern is getting help for his officers, which begins with a new contract.
The cops have been working here over a year without a contract. Minneapolis, I think, is 17th for starting pay in the metro. That's got to get corrected. There's no question, the cops here are, if not the most scrutinized, among the most scrutinized in the country. And I think a lot of that is earned. But at the same time, we have to recognize this job is what it is. It's extremely difficult. There's a whole lot of challenges. And if we want to attract good people, the best and the brightest who are interested in this profession, we have to make it worthwhile.
Kent, that contract remains a huge unsolved issue right now. These talks have always fallen short. But right after your interview with the chief, he was in front of cameras again talking about juvenile crime, and his tone sure did seem to shift from when he was with you.
Yeah, it definitely did, Jana. It happened in response to a presentation Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty gave to a city council committee. And before I get into the comments themselves, we need to give you some context on that presentation.
I'm Gordon Severson. Today, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty met with members of the Minneapolis City Council to give an update on this issue of teenage car thefts. She says last year, more than 7,000 cases of car theft happened here in Minneapolis, but her office only received about 2% of those cases to consider charges. She says the reason is because these cases are so difficult for officers to investigate and prove. And when her office does receive a case, she says oftentimes her attorneys decide that they don't have enough evidence to charge either. That's why her office and law enforcement decided to create a new program to intervene with these kids that they couldn't charge. And Moriarty says there is some early information, some data that suggests this program may be working. She says over the last year they have made connections with 82 teenagers, and a majority of them have not been charged with the case ever since they've been connected with resources.
Okay, it might not sounded like much controversy there, but Chief O'Hara attended that presentation, and I'm told he took exception to some of the things that Moriarty said in regards to his willingness to work with a youth diversion program and accept help from federal resources. So right after that presentation, he spoke out.
Any implication that the Minneapolis cops are not doing everything they can to try and solve that problem, not partnering with people to try and address it, is just not true, and it's a slap in the face to the cops that are out there every single day putting their lives on the line to try and resolve this problem as quickly as we can. I am all for diverting juveniles when appropriate, but that is not the problem that we're dealing with right now. We need to do everything that we can to get these violent juveniles arrested, charged, and off the street.
So that's what he says late this afternoon. Kent, talk a little bit for our audience about, you spoke with Chief O'Hara for an hour talking about wanting to be on the same page. These are shared problems with all of us in the community. So why do you think that tone shift happened?
Well, you know, Jenna, we've known that there is potentially some friction between the police department and the prosecutor's office. So during our conversation, I did ask the chief if he felt like everyone was pulling in the same direction, specifically when it came to this issue. And he went out of his way to not say anything about that. He, in fact, said that he did believe everyone is pulling in the same direction and that the prosecutor's office has been a part in that. So I don't know, in terms of those comments and how they were taken, how he might have been feeling after that presentation in which he felt the same courtesy wasn't extended his direction. Again, though, that's reading into those comments.
Right.
We just wanted to play them, and that's how it sounded.
Right. You and I just have the shared experience of hearing one thing and then a different thing, but tensions are high for sure.